Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively cover 7 articles in 2 different sections. In the analysis part, we'll first understand what are digital arrest scams and how they're becoming a growing concern with respect to the overall cybersecurity architecture in the country. Then, in the second article, we'll understand what is occupational safety and what are the issues and the way forward with respect to the same. Then, in the simplified section, we'll have a comprehensive look at 5 different articles with special reference to the UPSC Prelims 2025 along with the value addition. So stay tuned. So coming to the very first article of the day, it is with respect to digital arrest scams. So recently, Prime Minister Modi has highlighted that citizens need to be more vigilant when it comes to these digital arrest scams. He has said that these scams, they basically defraud the victims of their hard-earned money and has asked them to report such cases to the cyber helpline. See, the overall gist is that what we are witnessing is a massive growth, a massive stride in the overall cyber domain. And along with that, what we are also witnessing is the growth in the cybersecurity threats, right? And one of the cybersecurity threats is digital arrest scams. So we'll see what this scam is all about and what are the issues and what should be the way forward. Now, this is with respect to GS Paper 3, cybersecurity. Now, let's first see what are digital arrest scams. See, what it involves is that you have a selected group of people, the criminals, who with the help of different online platforms, let's say WhatsApp, right, or messaging apps, and fake identities and fraudulent documents, they basically defraud people, right? What they try to do is that they impersonate themselves as law enforcement officials. So what they do is they exploit the vulnerable citizens through digital platforms. Right? And again, what you need to understand that this digital arrest scams, they are the part and parcel of the larger cybercrimes. For example, we have got different cybercrimes, be it hacking, be it the phishing activities, be it the ransomware. So one of the cybercrimes is also, we have the digital arrest scams. Now, what people do in this particular scam is that they manipulate the criminal justice system. Right? How do they do that? By actually presenting themselves as law enforcement officials, right? So they impersonate themselves, right? With the help of fake identities that they are the law enforcement officials, and then they try to exact that amount from the victims, right? Now, what they leverage is the fear of arrest or prosecution to force the victims. And this makes them to ensure that they get hefty sum of amount from these victims, right? So they, under the fear, see, understand that we have got certain vulnerable sections, be it the senior citizens or be it the rural population. Now, both these sections, for example, they don't have the adequate digital literacy, right? The second thing is that they are also unaware about their legal rights. So what happens is that these group of people, they actually leverage this part, right? The ignorance of the rural population or the senior citizens with respect to the legal rights or with respect to the digital literacy. And then they try to exploit that gap. And again, what they do is they try to then exact that particular amount. Now, what it does is that there have been instances where fraudsters have impersonated as law enforcement officials. They issue fake arrest warrants, and again, if once they issue the arrest warrants, fake arrest warrants, what it does is that the victims, primarily the vulnerable section, they ask for the settlement of the issue, and then they take a huge sum of money, hefty amount of money, in order to settle that particular claim. So that is the overall crux of digital arrest scams. What you need to know is that it is all a fabricated system, right? It is a fake system where these people, they're not a part of the official law enforcement, but what they're pretending, what they're impersonating to be the part of law enforcement agencies, and they're committing these crimes. Now, if you go into the numbers to know what is the current status, what you will see is that the digital fraud cases, they have witnessed a huge surge in the recent years. And if you specifically talk about the digital impersonation cases, where people are pretending to be an official, right? They are actually lying about that. So that is what digital impersonation is all about. And these are the maximum number of cases which you see in the digital fraud, right? Now, according to the Ministry of Home Affairs, there have been more than 50,000 cases of these digital fraud in the year 2022 alone. And these are, please understand, the reported cases. We're not talking about the unreported cases, right? Next. These cybercrimes, they contribute significantly to these cybercrime losses. See, if you talk in terms of the overall cybercrime losses, according to the National Crime Records Bureau, in the year 2022, the amount of cybercrime losses, it was basically 1.25 trillion rupees. Right? Just imagine the quantum of losses being suffered because of the cybercrimes. Next is, as I told you, that the common target of these digital arrest scams is the vulnerable individuals, be it the rural population or be it the senior citizens. Why? As I have already told you, first reason is that they are unaware about the digital domain aspect. They are not that digitally literate. Second is that they lack the legal rights, the information with respect to the legal rights. And this is particularly exploited by these people, where they exploit this fear among these people, and then they impersonate themselves as law enforcement officials, and then they exact that particular amount from these people. Now, what the data says is that more than 60% of the victims of the digital arrest scams, they are the people above 40 years of age, right? So again, what we are trying to emphasize is that the major chunk of the victims of digital arrest scams, they are the senior citizens or the rural people, right? Now, in the Hindu Today itself, on page number 9, we also have a very good column which is talking about the statistics with respect to the cyber crimes in India, right? So a plea was actually given to the Reserve Bank of India in the form of right to information, and then this information has been actually taken. Now, as the data says, according to the data from the Reserve Bank of India, sent in a response with respect to a RTI application, 3,207 crores was lost because of 5,82,000 cases of cyber fraud between financial year 20 and 24. Now, if you just look at this data, see, again, I'm not asking you to memorize this data, but again, if 2 or 3 points can be taken from this data and if they are used in your answers, definitely they'll enhance the credibility of your answer. So if you just look at this particular data, what you'll see is that this chart talks about the number of cases of cyber fraud across the year in banking transactions. Now, if you just see that there has been a sudden spike if we talk about the year 2023-24, right? So it was almost, we have 65,000 in the year 2021-22, and this has gone up tremendously to nearing 3 lakh cases, right? Again, the amount of loss incurred from cyber fraud and rupees crore, it is almost 2,054 crores. Right? And this was almost 421 in the financial year 22-23, right? Next, if you just look at which is the state in India which suffers the most because of these cyber frauds, we have Maharashtra. So Maharashtra accounts for almost 1/4 of the total amount which is lost because of these cyber frauds. Just look at this, 26%, right? Next, we have the state of Tamil Nadu, right? So one of the reasons why you have Maharashtra as a state which is suffering the brunt because of these cyber frauds is because that it's the commercial capital of the country. Most of the transactions, most of the institutions which are centered around the finance, they are situated in Maharashtra, right? Specifically in Mumbai. Now, if you look at the chart which shows the number of cases with respect to the cyber fraud in public sector and private sector banks, look at the private banks. The number of cases, it's almost touching to 2.5 lakhs. And the same number is with respect to public banks, it is almost lesser than 50,000. If you look at the amount in crores, which was lost because of the cyber frauds, it is almost above than 1,500 crores. And the same number for public banks, it is almost 250 crores, right? So just have a look with respect to these numbers because they can be important once you're writing a particular answer in the mains. Now, let's talk about the importance, why these digital arrest scams need to be restrained. First is trust in law enforcement. See, please understand that if you'll have such kind of people, such kind of criminal network of people, which basically exploit this gap, and they pretend to be, they impersonate as law enforcement officials, then it would definitely erode the trust which people have in the overall criminal justice system. And this is obviously not good. Next is that, see, a large amount of money, we just saw in the graphs before, a large amount of money is being lost. And that is, people accumulate a lot of savings for years and that amount is suddenly lost because of all these things. So it is leading to financial insecurity. Next is, see, if the number of these cases would rise, definitely it would lead to strengthening the cybersecurity domain. And this would require more and more resources, right? More and more skilled personals with respect to the government, right? So again, these are primarily the reasons why you need to have a strengthened, a robust architecture so that it can restrain, it can control the digital arrest frauds. Now, what are the issues? What are the challenges with respect to the digital arrest frauds? Why they're taking place? First is lack of public awareness. See, understand. People, as I told you, majority of the people in the country, they are unaware with respect to their legal rights. They're unaware with respect to the working of the digital systems, the computers, or specifically the smartphones, right? So whenever they receive a message or whenever they receive a call, they think that it is from a legitimate source. And then that leads to these transactions being carried out, which are ultimately the transactions which are done by defrauding the people, by making people feel that yes, they are from the legitimate source, but they are not. More so, what we are seeing is that people do not have the knowledge with respect to the protocols for the law enforcement. So whenever you have a person who is calling or sending a message and saying that he or she is from a particular law enforcement, people are gullible. They believe that yes, it's true. And then they basically try to give money, right? And then this whole transactions happen. Next is the complexity of digital frauds. See, most of these frauds which are taking place with the help of messaging apps or let's say WhatsApp. Now again, please understand that these are primarily the encrypted messaging, through the encrypted messaging or through the voice over internet protocol. Again, these are the systems which are not easily traceable. The law enforcement cannot easily trace them. And then it becomes complex for these police to actually trace the source of these calls. See, we have got the voice over internet protocol. Now, this is done by having multiple pathways over the internet. So therefore, it's a very difficult situation for the law enforcement, for the police to trace and track that who are really responsible for it. Next is insufficient cybersecurity infrastructure. India has witnessed a lot of strides, a lot of improvement when it comes to the overall cyber domain. But again, if we talk about the infrastructure, we are lacking. We are lacking with respect to having proper systems in place which can actually detect these calls and messages. So again, we lack the resource and we lack the expertise. Now here we are also talking about the skills which are required with respect to managing these crises, right? The human skills which are required. Next is identity thefts and impersonation. See, what these people, these group of people, the criminals do is that they impersonate as being a part of a law enforcement agency. Let's say they are impersonating that they are actually from the police. What they do is that they steal the information and then they try to forge it, right? Forge it for their own benefit. And they use different techniques, different sophisticated techniques. For example, we have got deepfakes, or for example, we have got social engineering. So these techniques are used by these people. Next is, there are legal and regulatory gaps. See, please understand that what we're trying to say is that the pace of the development of the cyber world, it is not in sync with the pace of the development of the regulatory framework. The pace of the development of the technology which is taking place in the cyber domain, it's quite faster than that of the regulatory domain. And therefore, these regulations, these laws, they're unable to basically control these activities. Next is rural vulnerability. Primarily, these incidents are actually occurring in the rural areas because, as I said, that there is a lack of digital literacy, and over there people can be easily intimidated, and therefore what it leads to is exacting that amount from these people, right? So these are some of the challenges with respect to the digital arrest scams. Now, what have been the government laws, schemes and initiatives to deal with these scams? First is, we all know that we have got the overall comprehensive framework, legal framework in the form of Information Technology Act. Now, this governs primarily all cyber crimes in the country, and it has a specific section, that is section 66D. Now, this addresses cheating, because cheating using impersonation and using computer resources, right? So this is the kind of section which is actually imposed once these people are caught. Next is, we have got various sections in the Indian Penal Code, which is obviously now subsumed in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Now we have got, for example, section 420 of the IPC, which talks about the cheating aspect. Next, we have got section 419, which talks about the impersonation. Then we have got section 465, which talks about the forgery, right? To forge these documents. So what we're talking about is that these criminals, what they do is they forge the documents and then they pretend to be the real police officers or the real part of the law enforcement agencies. Next is, we have got the very important Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023. Now, see, this provides, it's one of its kind. And after years of deliberation, the government finally passed it. There are concerns with respect to this particular act. Now, this particular act, it aims to protecting the individual's personal data and ensuring stricter data security. It obviously includes these aspects of preventing such frauds. Next is, we have got Cyber Swachhata Kendras. Now, this is a part of the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The overall objective of the Cyber Swachhata Kendras is to provide alerts and advisories with respect to such suspicious transactions. Or if they come to know that, yes, something mischievous is going on, then it provides the alerts to the citizens. Next is, we have the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal. Now, see, this particular portal, it acts as a center stage with respect to reporting all these cybercrimes. That is what even Prime Minister Modi has said, that people, whenever they're actually defrauded or whenever such incidents are happening with them, they should report it to the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal. Now, this streamlines the access to the law enforcement resources with respect to the cybercrimes. Next is, we have got the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013. Please understand, this is the overarching framework. This is a very comprehensive policy which deals with the overall cybersecurity architecture in the country. And it aims to empower citizens at the ultimately, right? Next is, we have got the National Cybercrime Coordination Center. Now, this is the cybersecurity and e-surveillance agency in the country. And it primarily, what it does is that it gathers the data with respect to the communication. So what we call is communication metadata, and also coordinate the intelligence with respect to different agencies in the country. Now, can you just tell me under which ministry this National Cyber Coordination Center comes? Do write in the comment section. Now, what should be the way forward with respect to dealing with such digital arrest scams? The first is strengthening the cyber laws and data protection framework. See, please understand. What we are saying is that we already have laws. For example, the Information Technology Act or the Personal Data Protection Act. What we are trying to emphasize is that these aspects of identity thefts, these aspects of impersonation, they should be duly integrated into these laws. And these laws must be made in sync with the technological development which are taking place in the overall cyber domain. Right? So they need to be made more relevant. That is what we're talking about. Second aspect is that we need to include more penalties, stringent penalties with respect to these actions. Whether if some action has taken place, if some event has taken place with respect to these digital arrests, then such laws should be in a position to basically take suitable actions. Next is improved cybercrime investigation infrastructure. So what we are actually focusing upon is a new concept. Specialized cyber units. That is, we need to have such units in major cities in the country, right? The objective is to make sure that the people in these units, they are actually adequately trained so that they can actually have a proper investigation with respect to these digital frauds. And again, what we are also focusing upon is that these group of people in these specialized cyber units, they need to be equipped with proper resources so that they can have advanced forensic tools, so they can investigate with proper tools. Next is, there has to be a proper technology investment. See, what we are talking about is, we have been witnessing the integration of different technologies, be it the artificial intelligence or be it the machine learning, in almost every domain. Over here also, what we are focusing upon is that these technologies must be duly integrated so that we can have real-time monitoring and detection of these cases. Whenever you have got these systems in place, they can actually detect on a real-time basis and can alert, send advisories. Next is adequate public awareness campaigns need to be made. So we need to focus upon digital literacy programs, primarily in the rural areas, right? And specifically for these senior citizens or rural sections of the society, which focus upon these information education campaigns. They should focus upon safe browsing practices. Also, secure data handling. So they need to be told that this data is very much private and they should not give this data to anyone who asks for it, right? There needs to be a protocol, and after that, they should give this data, right? Rural outreach. So again, through different means, for example, community events or radio or SMS alerts, the rural community need to be informed with respect to these suspicious transactions or suspicious activities which are taking place. Next, we need to collaborate with financial institutions and telecom companies. See, telecom companies, they are also one of the very important stakeholders. They should basically send SMS and call for the verification part, right? They need to be in a state that they can inform their customers that please do not respond to such messages. Please do not respond to such calls if they are actually if they're asking you some amount, because government never does that. Government would never ask you to give some amount, right? With respect to having, these transactions. Next is robust security protocols. Again, what we're focusing upon is that these telecom operators, right? They need to have robust security protocols. For example, multi-factor authentication. So this would make sure that only the real persons are actually calling, right? Only legitimate communication is taking place, right? Next is strengthen cross-border cooperation. Very important. So what we're focusing upon is that there is a need for a more robust collaboration among different countries, among different international organizations, right? For example, let's take the case of World Economic Forum. Now, the World Economic Forum is also working upon these cybersecurity architectures. So a proper collaboration needs to be there so that we can have proper knowledge exchange. We can also focus upon the tracing techniques, quick response mechanism, so that adequate mechanisms are in place so as to know that yes, this is a particular region or these are the group of people who have actually perpetrated these activities. Next is mutual legal assistance treaties. Now these are very important. These are the treaties among different countries or between a country and international organizations. Such treaties should have the provision with respect to the cyber crimes. What we are saying is that if two countries are having the mutual legal assistance treaties, they should also include this aspect of cyber crimes. And then there has to be a protocol with respect to managing these activities, right? Making sure that these activities do not take place, right? And we can actually control such activities. So what we are focusing upon is definitely there is a huge growth when we talk about the overall cyber domain. And along with that, what we are witnessing is the instances of such activities which are taking place. And these activities are obviously not important for the overall cybersecurity architecture. See, please understand that it is not just for the economic importance that we should try to control these digital arrest scams. What is also important is that if such scams continue to take place, this would erode the trust of people in the public institutions, trust of people in the law enforcement agencies, and that is obviously not good. So these steps must be taken so as to ensure that we have a very robust cybersecurity architecture in place. That is what you need to know with respect to this article. Before we go to the next topic, we have a mains question. The question says, examine the rise of digital arrest frauds in India, discussing the methods used, the impact on the citizens' privacy and security, and the legal and technological challenges in tackling such frauds. Suggest steps that can be taken by the law enforcement agencies and policymakers to address these issues effectively. So do write a particular answer on this question. Now, before we go to the next topic, I have two questions for you to assess your preparation. The first question is of polity, right? Now, you need to tell me that we have got the Attorney General of India, right? So in the table of precedence, who is equivalent to that of the Attorney General of India? Again, I'm repeating. Who is equivalent to Attorney General of India in the table of precedence? This is the first question. Second question is with respect to geography, a very easy question. You need to tell me the name of the strait which separates the Pacific Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. You need to tell me the name of the strait which separates the Pacific Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. Just let me see who answers first in the comment section. So do give me the answer if you know that. So coming to the next topic, it is with respect to the occupational safety or workers' safety. See, the whole gist is that we have been focusing upon enhancing different activities, be it the construction or manufacturing, but there has been a lack of focus on the safety aspects. primarily with respect to these workers, right, who are vulnerable sections of the society. So what we have recently witnessed is that 2 workers have died after inhaling toxic fumes at Gujarat factory. Now, this is a very important topic, and we need to discuss what do we mean by occupational safety, what is the importance of occupational safety, and what are the issues and what should be the way forward. Now, this is with respect to GS2, issues relating to the development and management, specifically the health aspect. Now, what is occupational safety? See, occupational safety is basically the list or the collection of all the measures and regulations which are actually designed to protect the workers from hazards. There can be different hazards in different industries. For example, in this case, we had the toxic gases. In sometimes, we can have the machines which are not working efficiently, or the machines which are actually not good in a good state, right? So that is what the occupational safety is all about. It incorporates all the measures which are required so as to enhance the overall well-being of the worker. Now, please understand that it's not just about the physical well-being of the worker when we're talking about the occupational safety. It also includes the mental aspect also. So we are also focusing upon the enhancing the mental safety, the physical and the mental safety of the worker. Now, as I said, that they basically create safe working conditions for the worker so as to make sure that it prevents injuries, occupational illnesses, and fatalities at the workplace. Now, what it includes consecutive trainings, safety protocols, compliance with standards, and making sure that continuous improvements are made in the overall safety paradigm. Now, if you talk about the status of these hazards which are there in the overall occupations in India, what you see is that workplace accidents in India are notably high. One of the reasons is, see, India is a developing country. We don't have that much of resources. And specifically when these employers or the owners of these industries, they are not really worried. They're not really inclined to invest a lot in the worker safety. And as a result, what happens is that because of this, ultimately it is that vulnerable worker who has to compromise his health, even to the extent of the death, right? So again, what we are seeing is that specifically we have some sectors, for example, we have got construction, or we have got mining, or we have got manufacturing. These sectors are more vulnerable with respect to the occupational hazards. Now, according to the International Labour Organization report of 2022, what it says is that almost 48,000 people in the country, they die annually because of these occupational hazards. Next, what we need to know is that there are sectoral gaps. What do we mean by that? There are some sectors which have got adequate safety protocols over there. But in majority of the sectors, for example, let's take the case of informal manufacturing. Now, in informal manufacturing, what we actually find is that workers are, they are handling different toxic and harmful chemicals, or be it that they are operating machines which are not safe. So in such cases, what we see is that the intensity and magnitude of the number of occupational hazard cases, it's quite more. Now, primarily, it is because of the lack of structured safety norms which are there in these industries. Next, if you look at the economic cost, what you would see is, again, if you have got these conditions, occupational hazards, and if it is leading to injuries or if it is leading to illnesses with respect to the worker, obviously it would impact the productivity of the end worker, and then this would have significant economic loss. So again, according to the International Labour Organization, what it says is that the unsafe working conditions in India, they almost cost the overall GDP of the country 4%, right? So this is a data which can be important for your mains. Now, what is the importance of these occupational safety guidelines? First is worker welfare and rights. See, ultimately the worker is a human, right? And they are not just a means, right? They should be treated as an end. So the ethical aspect also comes in. What we are trying to focus upon is that the worker health and safety should be of prime importance. Next is global compliance and competitiveness. India is on the path of increasing its trade relations with different countries around the world. And you must be aware that we have got some of the regions in the world, for example, European Union or the Western markets. Now, they pay a good amount of importance on the worker safety, right? They want to ensure that the kind of activities, the industrial activities which are taking place in India, and out of that, whatever the product is being produced, and if it is coming to America or let's say the European Union, that has to follow proper safety standards. safety standards, including the occupational safety norms. So again, if India wants to have a proper trade relations with different countries around the world, and if it wants to be a key supplier to different countries around the world, so it has to ensure that it focus upon these occupational safety norms. Now, what are the issues and challenges with respect to occupational safety in the country? The first is the high informal sector presence. As I just told you, almost 90% of the workforce in the country is in the informal sector, which is obviously out of the scope of the regulation of the government. And therefore, what is happening is that workers they're actually consuming a lot of these toxic gases, or they're handling different chemicals, harmful chemicals, or they're not having proper personal protective equipments with them. Again, what we're trying to tell is that there has to be a proper regulation, including for the informal sector. So these informal sector, this particular sector, it is working without the consistent regulatory oversight of different government institutions. And again, there is the prevalence of lack of safety measures. As I just told you, the workers are not even being provided the personal protective equipments, right? They are actually handling these chemicals barehanded. Next is lack of awareness and training. See, the kind of training which needs to be there with respect to handling these chemicals, or with respect to the overall safety aspect, this is not being provided. See, again, please understand, as I just told you, that this is a resource intensive task, and no employer, in fact very few employer would actually want to invest in this aspect, right? And therefore, if you don't have the protocols, the knowledge about the safety protocols with the workers, obviously it leads to poor risk assessment, and then accident prevention does not take place. Next is inadequate infrastructure and equipment. See, the kind of infrastructure which is there in the Indian industries, in the majority of the Indian industries, and the kind of equipments which are used, they are outdated. They lack the safety aspect. And again, they are not being integrated with respect to the technology, right? So if you can have proper technologies integrated, the safety aspect obviously can enhance. But because of the lack of resources, what we are seeing is that this safety aspect is not being followed. Next is understaffed and underfunded regulatory bodies. It's not just with respect to these industries. What you need to focus upon is even the regulatory bodies, they don't have the adequate number of staff or the adequate resources with them so that they can conduct checks, they can conduct surprise visits, and they can make these industries to follow these regulatory norms. So again, what we are seeing is that they fail to effectively monitor and enforce these safety standards. Next is fragmented legislation and weak enforcement. See, please understand, we have got different laws in the country, different laws dealing with different industries, but the aspect of comprehensive safety norms for the workers is missing in all these laws. So the laws are fragmented in nature. Again, what it is leading to is ineffectiveness because of the poor implementation and enforcement. Then what we see is that there are certain sectors which are actually more vulnerable, which are more prone to these hazards. For example, construction. So what we've unfortunately witnessed, that there are incidents of falls from buildings and people die. And then there are issues with respect to the electrical mishaps. Then there are issues with respect to the machine related injuries. Then we have got the mining. So what we see is that many of the times these workers, they are exposed to toxic gases, be it carbon monoxide or be it the methane, right? So that leads to, even in extreme cases, the death of these workers. Then the risk of mine collapse. Many of the time these mines collapse and many of the workers die. Then there are issues with respect to inadequate emergency measures. See, proper equipments are not being provided. Personal protective equipments to these workers are not being provided, right? And therefore, many of the time it leads to the death of these workers. Then there are issues with respect to the manufacturing sector. So chemical exposure takes place with respect to different chemicals. Then we have got burns, which take place because of the heat involved in the manufacturing process. Then we have got the machine related injuries. So these are some of the specific sectors which are more prone to these industrial hazards. Now, what have been the government laws, schemes and initiatives? First is the very important Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code of 2020. See, it tries to basically integrate 13 labor laws with respect to these occupational safety aspect. It tries to make sure that the whole overall aspect of the safety is comprehensive, but there are issues with respect to the implementation of this particular code. Next is Factories Act. Now, this is one of the oldest laws when we talk about the regulation of the industry, and it also has certain aspects with respect to the occupational safety. Next, we have got the Mines Act. Now, this primarily deals with the aspect of mining and making sure the workers in the mining sector, they are actually having proper safety norms with them, following the norms. Then we have got the specific sector, that is Building and Construction Workers Act of 1996. Then we have got the Employees State Insurance Act of 1948. This primarily tries to give social security and make sure that whenever such incidents happen, the workers are provided adequate healthcare facilities, right? Next, what are the schemes? So we have got one of the very comprehensive schemes, that is National Policy on Safety, Health and Environment at the Workplace, 2009. It tries to cater a different aspect of the safety norms. Next is Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, again a social safety net which is provided to these workers. Again, the objective is to make sure that adequate safety norms, adequate social safety norms are there for these workers. Next is skill development programs. See, we have got the Skill India Initiative, we have got the National Skill Development Corporation. One of the aspect of the Skill India Initiative and the National Skill Development Corporation is to make sure that skills are also provided in these safety aspects, right? So they're also providing vocational training in these safety aspects. Next is Employee State Insurance Scheme, again to make sure the health of the workers is maintained and then they are helped in the times of crisis. Now these are the government laws, schemes and other initiatives. Now, what should be the way forward? What should be the way forward? First is strengthening the regulatory framework. See, what we are focusing is that we have different laws, fragmented legal architecture that should be made more simplified. We need to simplify the legal architecture. Second is we need to strengthen the occupational safety by fully implementing the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code of 2020. So there are, as I told you, that there are implementation issues with respect to these code. So it needs to be first made more comprehensive in nature and then the implementation aspect needs to be seen. Again, what we are focusing upon is that both the formal and the informal sectors should be integrated, because as I just told you that more than 90% of the workers, they are in the informal sector. So that should also be integrated in this particular regulatory oversight. Next is enhanced training and awareness programs. What we are focusing upon is that these workers should be provided timely and adequate trainings with respect to the safety protocols. Adequate resources must be invested with respect to these protocols. Training with respect to these protocols. Then hazard identification must be done, right? And then emergency preparedness should be actually given to, the kind of training with respect to the emergency preparedness should be given to these workers. Next is increase safety inspections and monitoring. Again, what we are seeing is that there needs to be a proactive approach with respect to the regulatory institutions in the country. The institutions must be more proactive in nature, right? And they actually need to invest and train more people with respect to the safety inspectors so that they can go and inspect different industries and make sure that yes, proper norms are being followed, right? Especially in high risk sectors. For example, as I just told you, we have got the manufacturing, right, which is primarily informal in nature. Then we have got the construction, or we have got these chemical industries. Next is technology adoptions need to be there. So we have got different technology, be it machine learning or artificial intelligence. They need to be basically integrated into the systems so that we can have got proper risk assessment done, right? Monitoring can be done with respect to these machines which are there in the industrial sector. Then real-time safety alerts can be given. And then automation for the high-risk tasks. So if you have certain tasks which are very high risk, so their manual intervention should not be there, right? So you can integrate the automation in those machines so that the life of the worker is not compromised. Then promote incentives for safety compliance, very important. If you have certain industries who are following these safety compliance, you need to award them. You need to give them incentives in the form of tax breaks or in the form of certifications. That is really needed. Next is extend the social security and insurance coverage. You have got different schemes. For example, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana. The government needs to give more and more of these schemes to different sections of the society so that it can make sure that adequate social safety net is there with these workers, right? And provide social security. Next is international collaboration. We have got different institutions. We have got different international institutions. For example, International Labour Organization. Now this needs to be integrated so that it can also fund some of the activities with respect to the technical assistance. It can provide some technical training, right? Next, training programs should be there. It needs to develop guidelines which can be followed by different industries around the country. So what we are focusing upon is that, see, the kind of economic importance we give to different sectors, that is not actually the kind of importance we are giving to the safety aspect of the workers. Both should be treated equally. If we are giving due importance to these sectors of the economy, then equivalent focus should be there with respect to the occupational safety of the workers. And over there, what we should have is a proper, robust framework. We already have some of these guidelines. These guidelines need to be followed. And again, please understand, the employers need to basically focus upon this. They need to invest a lot of resources so as to make sure that their workers, their health and their life is not compromised. So that is what is needed in order to make sure that these incidents do not happen, right? So this is what you need to know with respect to the occupational safety aspect. So we have a mains question, practice question. The question says, discuss the current status of occupational safety in India, highlighting the key issues and challenges faced by the workers across various sectors, analyze the effectiveness of the existing government laws, policies and initiative aimed at ensuring the worker safety and well-being, suggest a comprehensive way forward to strengthen the occupational safety standard in India. 15 marks, 250 words. Do write a particular answer on this question. So coming to the simplified section, we have got the first article, which talks about the possible reasons for the worsening air quality in Delhi. See, the gist of the article is that primarily during these months, we attribute one of the reasons to this Delhi's pollution crisis as the stubble burning. So we always say that it is primarily because of the stubble burning which is taking place around Delhi in the states of Haryana or Punjab or Western Uttar Pradesh, that there is a continuous spike in the pollution levels. And this is, yes, an accepted reason, definitely. But this article also tries to give you other reasons. For example, it talks about a very important reason for the pollution, and that is the secondary inorganic aerosols. It also talks about the other aspects of pollution, for example, the vehicular emissions or the construction dusts. So this is the overall crux of the article, that yes, the stubble burning is one of the reasons, but it's not just the sole reason for that. We have got the aerosols also, and then we have got the vehicular dust also, right? So what we see is the article says that with the withdrawal of the southwest monsoon, and with the onset of winters, what we see is that the air quality in Delhi, it has started to nosedive. The quality of air which we have in Delhi, it's like a gas chamber, right? The city and its adjoining territories, they are actually recording some of the highest levels of PM 2.5, and these are exceeding 300 in the category of very poor air quality. And the forecast suggests that this could actually worsen in the coming days. And again, what we are actually trying to focus is that this decline in the air quality, it coincides with the problem of stubble burning in Punjab. As I just told you, primarily one of the reasons which we often cite is the stubble burning. See, now let's talk about that. What is the contribution of stubble burning to the air pollution in Delhi? First, let's see what stubble burning is all about. So stubble burning is a traditional practice where the farmers, they burn the remnants of the paddy stock which are left behind after the harvesting, right? And it is the quickest way which farmers have in Punjab and Haryana, as you have a very narrow window. See, please understand that you have to sow the winter crops, right? And the time is limited. So the quickest way in which the farmers can ensure that they actually make sure that they sow the winter crops at the time is by actually burning the leftover stubble, right? So that is the quickest way. Now, again, the environment, if we go into the environment impact, that has been discourse in the study of the environment science since the 1990s, right? And see, again, while actually examining the economics of rice wheat, what we also said that yes, there are labor costs with respect to the threshing or making sure that you involve labor. So if you involve labor, what would happen is it would enhance the cost, and that is obviously the farmer cannot bear that. So the best way to actually get over that is to burn it, right? Now, from the use of mechanical devices such as rice shredders and combine harvesters, what they do is that once you're using these mechanical machines, what it is ultimately leading to is that is leaving that stack of these crops, and that has to be burnt by the farmers. Now, initially it was condemned as a waste of valuable manure, and it was also said that it's harming the farmer's health because you are burning that. But what you found afterwards was that it's not just with respect to the harming the farmer's health, it's also worsening the air quality in Delhi. And the use of different techniques, for example, today we can use instruments, modeling studies, computational methods, and now it is clear that it is primarily one of the reasons for the worsening air quality in Delhi. Now, so we have got a particular study by Climate Trends. Now, it found a strong correlation between the wind direction and the resulting pollution in Delhi. For example, it said that in case of Punjab during the winter, 54% of the time when the wind came from the state, it blew towards Delhi, it led to a spike in the pollution in Delhi areas, right? Wind originated from Haryana. When the wind originated from Haryana, the figure stood at 27%. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that these fire incidents, they increase the amount of PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5, and the levels increased by almost 12.44 units. Now, then we had a different study which was carried out by IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi, TERI and Airshed. Now, this also found that from mid-October to the end of November 2022, the role of stubble burning to air quality was on an average 22%, and it peaked to as much as 35%. Previous studies, they have actually given a range, and the range is 20 to 40% with respect to the contribution of stubble burning to the overall pollution in Delhi. Now, the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, Pune, maintains an air quality forecast system models which actually shows the dynamic nature of stubble burning's impact on Delhi's air pollution. Now, this study is very interesting. Why? Because it says that from October 8 to 19 this year, farm fires accounted for less than 1.2% of the PM 2.5 load in Delhi. Now, the average AQI, the air quality index in this period, it was between 130 to 198. On October 21st, when you had the stubble burning's relative contribution, it rose to 3.2%. Delhi's AQI, it actually plummeted. It went to 310. Then on October 23rd, the relative contribution of burning, it reached to the seasonal high of 16%. The index, it deteriorated to 364, still in that category of very poor. Now, what is the inference from these observations? Again, what we're trying to say is that this transitioning period from the withdrawal of the monsoon, southwest monsoon, and the onset of winter, what it leads to is a sharp drop in the wind speed. The wind speed is very reduced, right? And this causes the air pollutants to hover around the ground, right? They don't have the capacity to fly above in the air, right? Then what happens is any additional source of pollutants, if you have any additional source of pollutant, that can dramatically increase the pollution load in Delhi. Also, nearly 55% of the pollution in Delhi originates outside its territorial borders. Thus, what we see is that small spikes can push the index as much as 100 points. It can deteriorate the air quality by almost 100 points in the air quality index from poor to very poor category. So, is stubble burning the sole villain in the Delhi's pollution? So, the answer is absolutely no, because we have a study which was done by Urban Emissions from the period 2016 and 23. Now, again, what it showed was that improving air quality reflecting in the index from a high of 285 to a low of 173 in 2021. Now, in 6 of these years, the index stayed above 216, therefore within the air quality index of poor quality. And Punjab fires. Now, this was a time when in Punjab, the farm fires reduced by almost 17,467 in 2018, right, to 1,749 in the year 2025. Now, farm incidents in Haryana also reduced. But again, what we are saying is, see, this study is trying to say that the number of farm incidents taking place in Punjab, they have reduced to a very less level. Same is the case with Haryana. But what you see is that the kind of air quality index you have in Delhi, that has not substantially reduced, right? So the kind of air quality you have in Delhi from this period of 2016 till 23, that is almost the same. The paddy harvested in Punjab is more than twice than that of Haryana. Yet this has only improved the index by 65 points. Now, the winter months, December, January, and February, by the meteorological department, as they say, by this time, the atmospheric conditions create a trap for pollutants and prevent them from being flushed out. Again, the reason is that during these months, you have got a very slowed wind activity. And whatever influx of pollutants is there, it remains at the near ground level. And then it leads to the spike in the pollution levels. However, stubble burning almost entirely ceases. Despite that, the air quality index has remained in the very poor and the severe category. So again, what we're trying to emphasize is that even in the winters when the stubble burning has completely stopped, the pollution remains very grave, right? Because again, it is primarily because of the sources, right? This suggests that the sources other than the stubble burning contribute significantly to the air pollution. So it's not just the sole villain, that the stubble burning is not just the sole villain. You have got other reasons as well. Which are these factors? On October 25th this year, the stubble burning was responsible for nearly 15% of the pollution. On the same day, Delhi transport, which includes particulate matter from the vehicles and vehicles crossing into Delhi, it was almost 18% of the PM 2.5. So it's not just right to say that the stubble burning is only the prime reasons. You have got the vehicular emissions, and then we also see the other reason. Then what you see is that the real-time source of apportionment of PM 2.5 also show that we have got the secondary inorganic aerosols. We have got the SIA, secondary inorganic aerosols, which basically travel from beyond Delhi, and it is one of the highest reasons. It's responsible for the highest spike in the pollution in the Delhi regions. Now, the SIA was responsible for almost 32%, and the biomass burning within and outside Delhi, it was responsible for 24%. Again, the SIAs, they basically form the secondary inorganic aerosols. They primarily form when the gaseous precursors like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and ammonia, they react to form ammonium sulfate or ammonium nitrates. That is, when these gases, they react and form ammonium salts. And these ammonium salts, they actually are in the atmosphere, then it leads to the spike in the pollution levels. In winter, the mean contribution of SIA from the sources within Delhi is 16%, and the rest 84% is from outside Delhi. So please understand, it's not just the sources are not just from Delhi itself. The sources are primarily from the outside. Policymakers have realized that the sources of air pollution can be tackled only by an airshed approach. As we have for the water management, the watershed approach, we should also, where you take a holistic look at the overall water scenario, we also need to have an airshed approach where we try to look at the problem holistically, right? Not just blame that, yes, stubble burning is the reason, or let's say vehicular dust. We need to incorporate all these reasons. Coordinated actions by multiple states to evolve a joint response to the pollution crisis. So this is primarily the article, what the article says. Now, it's a good opportunity to discuss about the air quality index. So the air quality index in India, it's a measure to communicate the quality of air in terms of the level of pollution which is present, assessing its potential health impacts. The index, it's primarily developed by the Central Pollution Control Board, which is under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. This simplifies the complex air quality data into an easily understandable format, right? So any layman can understand that, yes, what is the level of the pollution in that particular location, ranging from 0 to 500. So from 0 to 500, with respect to these numbers, we can identify that, yes, what is the range or what is the magnitude of the pollution which is there in that particular location. The AQI helps the public understand whether the air quality is healthy or hazardous. Now, what you need to keep in mind is the AQI, the kind of pollutants which are actually measured by the AQI. First is the particulate matter 10, right? 10 microns or less. Then we have got the particulate matter 2.5 microns or less. Then we have got the nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, ammonia, and lead. Do remember. Now, the AQI category, as I just told you, that it's divided into different categories so that it's easy to understand for the layman, right? So we have got the AQI range from 0 to 50. It talks about the good. The category is good, and it has minimal impact. When we talk about the next category, it is 51 to 100. It's known as the satisfactory. Then minor breathing discomfort can be there to sensitive people. Then we have got the range from 101 to 200, known as moderate. Now, breathing discomfort to sensitive individuals. Then the range is from 201 to 300. The category is poor respiratory impact on prolonged exposure. Then we have got the 301 to 400, very poor respiratory effects for healthy people, serious for sensitive people. 401 to 500, severe, affects healthy people and seriously impacts those with existing conditions, right? Now, next, what you need to understand is the importance of this AQI. See, again, if you have a proper number with respect to the kind of pollution which is there, then it helps the policymakers to make adequate policy interventions, right? So health awareness is also there. So we have got the crucial data with respect to the informed decisions to protect their health, especially for the vulnerable groups like children or senior citizens. Then policy guidance, as I just said, that it helps the policymakers to gauge the air quality trends and take necessary actions. Then public awareness, it increases the awareness of the pollution levels. People are much aware that, yes, the kind of pollution they have at a particular location, right? Now, India's AQI often shows poor to severe levels, especially in urban areas during winters, largely due to industrial emissions, vehicular exhaust, stubble burning, and construction dusts. Then we have got specifically the northern regions, the Delhi and Uttar Pradesh. They actually record hazardous AQI levels in the colder months because of the weather conditions and pollution sources, which we have discussed in this article, be it the stubble burning, be it the vehicular dust, or be it these SIA, secondary inorganic aerosols. Now, what are the sources for AQI data? For the real reliable data, we have got the CPCB, the Central Pollution Control Board. It provides the AQI data and trends. Then we have got the SAFAR. Now, this is important. This is System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting. Now, this offers real-time AQI information for Delhi, Pune, Ahmedabad, and Mumbai. Do remember this. Next aspect is very important because see, UPSC has been in a habit of asking questions with respect to these pollutants, different sources of pollutants. So this can be really important, and that's the reason I have incorporated this. So the secondary inorganic aerosols, they are a type of aerosols particles in the atmosphere from which basically they are from the precursor gases, right? So initially you have got gases in the atmosphere, and these gases, they react among each other, and then it leads to the formation of these SIAs, rather than being directly emitted as the particles. So as the word says, secondary, right? They are secondary pollutants, not the primary pollutants. The primary components of these SIAs are sulfates, nitrates, and ammonium, which result from the chemical reactions involving sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and ammonia. The kind of processes which are there is first is oxidation of precursor gases. What happens in this is that you have got gases like sulfur dioxide or nitrogen dioxide. They basically undergo the oxidation and they form the sulfate or nitrate particles. Now these sulfate or nitrate, they react with ammonia, ultimately leading to the formation of ammonium salts, for example ammonium sulfate or ammonium nitrates, and these are the ones which actually contribute to the overall pollution, right? These reactions occur in humid environments or cloud droplets, which actually accelerate the transformation of these precursor gases to these pollutants. Now what is the importance and impact? See, first is air quality. SIAs, they basically deteriorate the air quality and they lead to the formation of PM 2.5 and PM 10 particulate matters, right? Which basically pose health risks, and they also are a very grave danger when we talk about the cardiovascular and respiratory disease. Then climate, so they also scatter the sunlight. What you need to remember is that they basically give a cooling effect because of negative radiative forcing effect, right? They also interact with cloud and other atmospheric processes, complicating the overall climate impact. Ecosystems, they can have a disastrous impact on the ecosystems, and they also lead to the soil and water acidification, and the effect is particular in the areas like forests and lakes. Now, what are the different sources? For example, we can have industrial emissions. So if you have got different factories which are emitting nitrogen dioxide or sulfur dioxide, right? Then we can have vehicular exhaust, for example, which is a major source of nitrogen oxides or sulfur dioxide, right? Then we have got the agriculture activities releasing the ammonia, right, particularly from fertilizers. In India, specifically, the extensive use of fertilizers and high vehicular and industrial emissions, they primarily contribute to the secondary inorganic aerosols. So do remember about this. It can be important for your prelims. Coming to the next article, it is with respect to enhancing the private buses in the overall e-bus push. See, the overall gist of the article is, it says that when we talk about the buses in the country, it is primarily dominated by the private sector, where you have the private sector which dominates almost 93% of the buses in the country, and only 7% of the total buses in the country, they are of public. They're operated by the public institutions. So what the authors are trying to say is that we have the government which is offering various incentives for the e-bus push, making the sector more climate friendly, right? But there are very less incentives or subsidies or primarily sources for these private players, so that they can also make their overall transitioning to a more cleaner fuel, right? Primarily the e-buses, right? So what we are trying to focus is, the authors are saying is that there have to be adequate incentives for the private players also, so they can be duly integrated into this transitioning from this current bad fuels to that of more cleaner fuels, right? So this is what the article is all about. Now, what the article says is that in a major push towards achieving India's climate target, the Union Cabinet recently approved the Prime Minister Electric Drive Revolution in Innovative Vehicle Enhancement (PM E-Drive), which allocates funding for the electric vehicles to the tune of almost 4,391 crores for the subsidies, demand incentives that support procurement of 14,028 electric buses in 9 cities, right? This is the overall objective of the scheme. So you can also have a look here. PM Electric Drive Revolution in Innovative Vehicle Enhancement, PM E-Drive, The cabinet has approved the PM e-drive scheme for promotion of electric mobility in the country with an outlay of 10,900 crores for 2 years. Subsidies, demand incentives worth 3,679 crores to incentivize e-two-wheelers, e-three-wheelers, e-ambulances, e-trucks and other emerging electric vehicles. E-vouchers for electric vehicle buyers to avail the demand incentives. Allocation of rupees 500 crore for the deployment of e-ambulances. Provision of 4,991 crores for procurement of 14,028 e-buses by STUs, state transport units and public transport agencies. Now, again, this is a very important scheme which tries to strengthen the public transport shift to the electric vehicles. Private bus operators are left out of the subsidy framework. This is a point of concern. And there are concerns with respect to the potential to scale electric mobility beyond the straight run buses. So again, as I told you, the gist of the article is that if you want the whole sector, if you want a holistic transition to a more green pathways, right? If you want that almost all the buses should be, more climate friendly, then you need to also incorporate, you need to give adequate subsidies to the private sector also, because they comprise almost 93% of the total buses in the country. Public sector driven, despite its fleet size. So electric bus deployment in India has thus far been driven by the public sector, supported with financial subsidies. For example, we had the first scheme of FAME, that is, we have faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles, FAME 1. Under FAME 1 from 2015-19, 425 buses received approval for purchase subsidies, and this rose to 7,120 buses under FAME 2nd, which was from 2019 till 2024. The incentives were available to state and city transport undertakings, municipal corporations and other public entities. However, what you need to keep in mind is the public transport buses, they make only 7% of the 24 lakh registered buses in the country. Despite private buses representing 93% of the buses in India, they are not yet included in any major national schemes or special incentive program. And that is the reason what you're seeing is that there is a push by these authors that they should also be integrated. The private buses should also be integrated for making sure that they have adequate incentives with them, right? While a few leading private bus operators, for example, NewGo and Chartered Speed, have electric buses in their fleet, the number remains small. If there is to be a scale in the electric bus market, the transition of private buses is very much critical. That is what the authors are talking about. Now, it's a good time to know about FAME schemes. So we have got the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan of 2020. Now, this was launched to achieve national fuel security by promoting hybrid and electric vehicles in the country. As a part of this, as a part of this National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, the Ministry of Heavy Industries, do remember that it is the Ministry of Heavy Industries, launched the FAME India scheme in 2015 to promote the adoption of electric hybrid vehicles. Now, the phase 1 of the first part of the FAME scheme, it started in 2015 and was functional till 31st March 2019 with a budget outlay of almost 895 crores. The second phase of the scheme started in April 2019 and it continues till 31st March 2024. Now, then we have got the FAME 2nd. This is, as I just said, that it was being implemented for 3 years with effect from 1st of April 19 with a budgetary support of 10,000 crores. And then it focuses upon different aspects. For example, E3-wheelers or 55,000 E4-wheelers and different aspects. You can have a look. Now, what the article says is that the International Council on Clean Transportation study suggests that there is the limited availability of financing as a key hurdle for the uptake of electric buses by the private sector. So what are the risks involved? For example, the higher perceived risk return profiles, high upfront cost, low perceived resale value of the electric buses as collateral, they are some of the reasons. Uncertainty regarding the battery life increases the perceived risks. Now, what are the hurdles? The studies show that the electric intercity buses can be more profitable than the diesel buses. So again, what the authors are saying is that we need to replace these diesel buses, primarily these intercity buses, which are dominated by the diesel buses. They need to be replaced by the e-buses. Most of the players in these intercity buses, they are private, right? So they need to be given adequate incentives, what the authors are talking about. However, high interest and loan installment costs make them less financially viable during the loan period. Despite this, the private intercity bus operators could benefit greatly from the electric buses. and it would offset their rising fuel costs. Intercity buses play a major role in India's transport with almost 22.8 crore passengers daily, and this accounts for almost 57% of the total ridership. Additionally, 40% of the intercity trips fall within the 250 kilometer. Now, this is a limit which is very much suitable for the e-buses also. Current electric buses models can cover on a single charge this distance, right, between 250 to 300 kilometers. Well suited for electric bus deployment. India aims to replace 8 lakh diesel buses with electric ones by 2030. This particular report has highlighted the potential of offering favorable financing options such as interest subsidies and longer loan tenures. Other measures can be the credit guarantees potentially rolled out through government banks. Now, this would help reduce the investment risks for the financiers. Next aspect is another key hurdle. What the article talks about is that the private electric buses adoption of charging infrastructure. See, FAME, this particular scheme, this primarily funded facilities. Now, this is limited to the depots of the state transport units. And 90% of the private bus operators in India, they manage fleets of fewer than 5 buses. So, though, see again, the state transport units, they have got adequate funds and the charging points are limited with respect to these depots. But these private buses operators, they're having at max, majority of them at max 5 buses. So they don't have the adequate capacity to make these charging stations at different points. So the high land and infrastructure costs make the investing in the charging facilities economically impractical. Private intercity bus operators may also face the challenge of power supply interruptions, then limited grid capacity and inadequate upstream infrastructure. So what you need to do is, in order to accelerate the private sector electric bus adoption, it is essential to develop shared public charging infrastructure that we have been talking about. That the charging infrastructure needs to be shared, right? Adequate, there has to be, I'm not saying that's just the public institutions which need to invest. There have to be an equitable investment made by the public as well as the private sector within the cities on high traffic highways, particularly the intercity corridors. State governments could lead the development by leveraging the financial subsidies. The PM eDrive scheme aims to subsidize 1,800 bus chargers, encourage private investments. State could also offer, if you want to encourage the private operators, the states can offer additional fiscal incentives or tenders for shared infrastructure. Now, the model has to be the design, build, operate, transfer. Now, this is one of the investment models. We have got the public-private partnerships. Different models are there, and one of the mechanism is design, build, operate, and transfer basis. So the charging infrastructure can be made on this basis. This would ensure the viability through the guarantees of minimum daily energy consumption per charger. This is what you need to know. Next is another aspect which the authors are trying to focus upon is the model of the battery as a service, right? BaaS. So again, this particular model, it separates the battery ownership with that of the vehicle ownership, right? So these ownerships are different in these cases. So it separates the battery ownership from that of the vehicle ownership, and this is one of the models which has been proved to be of great success in countries like China and Kenya. So this model, along with battery swapping, has the potential to accelerate the private electric bus adoption in the country. To create scale and reduce the cost in the electric bus market in India, promoting uptake in the private sector is very much important. As I said, that the majority, almost, there's a dominance of the private buses in the whole market. So if the government is not actually focusing upon these private buses, obviously there would not be a proper transitioning to a cleaner sort of mechanism, cleaner environment. EV transition under the PM eDrive scheme. There are opportunities for policy in the areas of financing incentives, charging infrastructure, innovative business models to help overcome the barriers to the electric bus adoption by the private operators. Now, here is a very good opportunity to discuss about battery as a service concept. Now, this is a business model in which, as I said, that the users lease or subscribe to a battery rather than owning it. Again, the ownership is different. You're not owning both the battery and the vehicle. There is a differentiation with respect to the owning aspect. So the battery is owned differently than the vehicle, right? Rather than owning it outright to power electric vehicles or other energy dependent devices. The model separates the cost of the battery from the EV itself, making it more affordable and reducing the upfront financial burden for the users. Users can exchange, rent or recharge the batteries at the designated swap stations, allowing for fast and convenient battery replacement instead of waiting for lengthy time periods. What are the key features? As I said, battery leasing or subscription. So users can subscribe to a service for battery usage, paying a regular fee rather than purchasing it outrightly. Then we have got the battery swapping. Many this BAAS systems offer battery swapping stations. Then we have got the reduced upfront cost. Obviously, if the ownership are different, the battery ownership is different from that of the vehicle ownership, there would be reduced costs. Separating the cost of the EV and the battery lowers the vehicle's initial price, making EV more affordable. Then efficient energy management. BAAS providers often monitor the battery performance and life cycles, improving the efficiency and promoting sustainability. Now, what is the importance of this concept? First is affordability, second is convenience, third is sustainability. So as I said, so why it is sustainable? Because see, again, you are focusing more upon the recycling aspect and battery management. So it is sustainable. Then you are separating the cost of the vehicle and that of the battery. So it's more affordable. Convenience, because again, you're not waiting for a longer time duration. You can basically, it reduces the charging time and a range of anxiety by allowing rapid battery swaps. Examples, we have got NIO, the Chinese EV company, offers BAAS. Then we've got Gogoro. Now this operates battery swapping for electric scooters in Taiwan. Then what are the challenges? First is infrastructure requirement. This is one of the greatest challenges because battery swapping stations, they require significant infrastructure, which can be costly. Next is battery standardization. Now, if you want to focus upon a system where different vehicles can basically swap the batteries, you need to have standardized models for the batteries. And that is basically a challenge, right? So different EV manufacturers must adopt compatible battery designs for interoperability across platforms. So these are the challenges with respect to BAAS. So this I thought can be important for the prelims. So coming to the next topic, it is with respect to the appointment of the Chief Justice of India. So Justice Sanjeev Khanna is said to be the new Chief Justice of India, right? And that is the reason this article has been featured in the Indian Express. And therefore, it becomes important for us to know what this process of appointment is all about. So we have got the Centre on October 24th appointed Justice Sanjeev Khanna as the next Chief Justice of India, approving the recommendation made by CJI. Now, this is very important. The recommendation made by Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud. Now, Justice Khanna is the senior most judge in the court, in the Supreme Court. Now, he would succeed the Chief Justice Chandrachud a day after later's retirement on November 10th. And he would actually hold the office for a little more than 6 months. Now, CJI's tenure, 2-year term, is one of the longest in the recent years. Now, what is the process of basically appointing the Chief Justice of India? See, by convention, the process is that the senior most judge after the Chief Justice of India is appointed as the next Chief Justice of India, right? So the senior most judge of the Supreme Court, based on the years of experience as a judge in the apex court, becomes the new Chief Justice of India. The process has now been put down in the Memorandum of Procedure for the appointment of Supreme Court judges, and more commonly known as Memorandum of Procedure, right? Now, the MOP says that the appointment to the office of the Chief Justice of India should be of the senior most judge of the Supreme Court. Even before the MOP was agreed upon in 1999, the senior most judge of the Supreme Court was by convention elevated to the top post. Now, how the process begins? See, again, the process is like the Union Minister of Law Justice basically seeks the recommendation of the outgoing Chief Justice of India for the appointment of the next Chief Justice of India at the appropriate time. Now, this is almost a month before the Chief Justice of India is set to retire, right? And then once the Chief Justice of India gives a recommendation, then it is forwarded to the Prime Minister. So after the receipt of the recommendation of the Chief Justice of India, the Union Minister of Law will put up the recommendation to the Prime Minister, who would then advise the President in the matter of an appointment. Though the final word of appointing the next CJI is technically with the Centre, by convention, the Centre tends to appoint whoever the presiding Chief Justice of India recommends as his or her successor, right? Has there ever been a departure from the convention? Now, this is obviously, you're all polity students, you know about this, the history, the judicial history in the country. It has told us that there have been instances with respect to this particular procedure being disregarded a couple of times, right? So yes, this convention was famously discarded by former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, whose government recommended the appointment of Justice A.N. Ray in the year 1973 as the Chief Justice of India, superseding 3 more senior judges. So we had Justice J.M. Shilat, then we have got Justice K.S. Hegde, and then we had Justice A.N. Grover. So his appointment Justice A.N. Ray appointment, it basically superseded these three senior judges. Justice Ray was considered to be more favorably disposed towards the Indira Gandhi government, and his appointment was announced the day after the Supreme Court gave the landmark verdict in the Kesavananda Bharati case, where the Supreme Court gave the basic structure doctrine. We all know that. Justice Ray was a part of the minority in the 7-6 verdict, right? So Indira Gandhi's government in January 1977 once again ignored the convention by superseding Justice H.R. Khanna to appoint Justice M.H. Beg as the Chief Justice of India. Now, why? Because Justice Khanna had been the lone dissenter in the ADM Jabalpur versus Shivkant Shukla case, very important case in polity, in which the majority comprising Justice A.N. Ray, P.N. Bhagwati, Y.V. Chandrachud and M.H. Beg agreed with the government that fundamental rights, including the right to life and personal liberty, stood abrogated during the period of national emergency. How did the MOP come into existence? So we had different cases. The first judge's cases of 1981, second judge's case of 1993, third judge's case of 1998. So it primarily gave a peer selection mechanism for the appointment of High Court and Supreme Court judges, commonly known as the Supreme Court Collegium, right? Now, this comprises of the senior most judges of the Supreme Court, and the center is technically bound to accept its recommendation. The MOP was first drawn in 1999, and it provides the procedure for the appointment and obligations of the center, the Supreme Court, and the High Courts. The collegium system of appointing the judges is a judicial innovation. Remember, it's a judicial innovation, right? It's not something which is mentioned in the Constitution itself. Not mandated through the legislation or through the text of the Constitution. In 2015, the Supreme Court struck down the constitutional amendment that brought in the National Judicial Appointments Commission, saying that it is arbitrarily infringing into the independence of the judiciary. Allowed the center to have greater influence. The court said that it allows the center to have greater influence in the process of recommending judges. Following this decision, the MOP was renegotiated in the year 2016. Now, this is a good opportunity to discuss about these four important cases: the first judge's case, second, third, and fourth. Now, in the first judge's case of 1981, also commonly known as SP Gupta versus Union of India, primarily what the Supreme Court said was that it gave the executive the primacy with respect to the judicial appointments, where the judiciary only have a consultative role, right? So do remember that in the first judge's case, what we are seeing is that it is primarily giving a primacy to the executive. Now, this led to significant executive control over the judicial appointments. Then in the next judge's case, that is the second judge's case of 1993, which is also known as the Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India, the court overruled the first judge's case verdict and establishing the collegium system, right? So collegium was actually initiated in this particular verdict, where the Chief Justice of India and the senior judges hold the primary role in appointments, giving primacy to the judiciary. Now, this shifted the power from the executive to the judiciary in the judicial appointments and transfer. Then we have got the third judge's case of 1998, precedential reference to the Supreme Court. Then in this particular verdict, the Supreme Court clarified that the collegium consists of the Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court, and not just 3. It expanded the collegium and strengthened the judicial appointment process. Then finally, in the fourth judge's case of 2015, Supreme Court on Records versus Union of India, the verdict struck down the National Judicial Appointments Commission, deeming it unconstitutional, and reinstated the collegium system. It reinforced the judicial independence by rejecting the executive involvement in the judicial appointments. What the court said was that this 99th Constitutional Amendment Act of NJAC, it is primarily infringing into the domain of the judicial independence, and that is not something right? So in order to maintain that separation of power balance, the court actually declared the NJAC Act and 99th Constitutional Amendment Act as unconstitutional. So this is what you need to know with respect to this particular article. Now, coming to the next article, it is with respect to the defense made by the center with respect to the Aadhar based payment system. So we had a report by the LibTech. Which said that because of this Aadhar enabled payment system, what you saw was that in the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, there have been a lot of deletion with respect to these workers, right? So this is what the report said, and now the center has come and said that this is not the case, and Aadhar enabled payment system is something which is actually strengthening the payment system and strengthening the governance of this particular Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Now, as I said, the Union Development Ministry in a statement defended the Aadhar based payment system for the Manrega workers, and says that it's a major reform that which helps in better targeting, increase efficiency, reducing delay in payments, and greater inclusion by curbing the leakages. Now, the reaction of the ministry, as I just told you, it's primarily because of the report by Libtech, a consortium of activists. Now, this pointed out that there have been a high rate of deletion of the workers enrolled in the program, which coincides with the government's insistence on using the particular Aadhar-based payment system. From January 1 this year, the ABPS has been made mandatory. Between April and September, 84.8 lakh workers were removed from the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. At the same time, only 45.4 lakh new workers have joined, with a net deletion of workers standing at 39.3. So what these activists are saying, it primarily the reason of the workers not being able to get the works under the Manrega is that you have made this particular Aadhar-based payment system as mandatory, right? The ABPS conversion was a major reform process where the benefits are credited directly into the bank account. So it's a direct benefit transfer scheme based on the Aadhar number of the workers under the Manrega, right? Doing away with the several layers. As on October 26, the center said that 99.3% of the total number of active workers are eligible for ABPS. So this is what you need to know. Now, this is a very good opportunity to talk about Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme and ABPS. So, Mahatma Gandhi National Employment Guarantee Scheme, it's a social security measure aimed at enhancing the livelihood security in the rural areas. It was enacted in the year 2005, providing at least 100 days. Now, this can be important. Do remember, 100 days of unskilled wage employment, in a financial year to every rural household whose adult member volunteer to do unskilled manual work. Now, what is the objective of this particular scheme? First, to enhance the livelihood security. Second, to create durable assets, for example, the assets in the village areas, right? Empower the rural households, especially women and other communities. Reduce the rural-urban migration, right? By providing employment in village itself. What are the key features? First is legal guarantee. It has a statutory backing, legal backing, right? It's a legal entitlement. Wage payment, the workers are entitled to receive wages within 15 days of work. Transparency, there are provisions with respect to social audits, right? To ensure more accountability and transparency. Then there are facilities at the work site, include facilities like drinking water, shade, and first aid, right? Next aspect is with respect to the implementation. See, the implementation is by the Ministry of Rural Development, with funds shared between the center and the state government. Funds are shared, do remember. Local Gram Panchayats are responsible for implementing the scheme. What are the challenges? First is delayed payment. Very big challenge. Workers often face delays in the payment. Corruption, there are issues with respect to the misallocation of funds. Awareness, people are not aware with respect to this particular scheme. Work quality, there are concerns with respect to the kind of infrastructure which has been made through this particular scheme, right? The assets which are created. Impact, it has a huge impact on the employment generation. It has generated substantial employment, particularly during economic downturns. Income support, it has provided safety net for the rural poor. Women empowerment, see again, the number of the women who are participating in the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, it is quite large. So it is also leading to women empowerment, has empowered them socially and economically. Recent development, so we have got the technology which has been integrated. So recent initiatives to improve the transparency and efficiency. So this is geotagging of the assets which are being created. So these are some of the measures, right? As digital wage payments and monitoring systems is something to enhance the accountability and transparency. Now, coming to Aadhar-based payment system. See, the Aadhar-based payment system is an electronic payment system in India which leverages the Aadhar number to facilitate the seamless and secure financial transactions. It aims to enhance the efficiency of the subsidy transfer, welfare payments, and various government schemes which are given directly to the beneficiary's bank account. Key features, first is Aadhar authentication. Payments are made using the 12-digit unique Aadhar number, allowing for easy verification of the individual. Direct benefit transfer, ABPS, is a part of the government's broader initiative to streamline the subsidy and welfare payments to the DBT. Again, the government has been focusing to enhance the DBT, direct benefit transfer, so as to minimize the leakages. Make sure that the leakages are ended and the fund is directly given to these end beneficiaries, right? So the corruption is also reduced. Interoperability, the system is designed to work with various banks and payment services so as to enhance the interoperability between different financial institutions and banks. Cost effective, reduces the administrative costs associated with the traditional payment methods such as cash distribution. Now, what are the benefits? First, that it leads to the elimination of the middleman by directly transferring the benefits to the bank account. Financial inclusion, again, it's leading to more financial inclusion because you are opening the bank accounts, giving more insurance services or different services, so leading to more financial inclusion. Real-time payments, transactions are processed in real time, improving the efficiency of the overall structure. What are the challenges? First is data privacy concerns. There are concerns with respect to data privacy because you are actually using a lot of biometric data, and then the kind of protection which is there with respect to these particular data, it's not sure whether it's a foolproof strategy or not. It's whether you have a robust strategy to manage that particular data or not. The collection and use of biometric data raise privacy and security issues. Technology barriers, some beneficiaries, especially in rural areas, may face a challenge because of lack of access to technology or digital literacy. See, we have a lot of time studies what are the challenges with respect to these schemes, but I have highlighted so that you can have a look, you can revise what are the kinds of issues which are there with respect to this particular scheme. System reliability, the dependence is on the technology and it can lead to disruptions during severe failures. Implementation, it is managed by the NPCI, National Payment Corporation of India, and supported by the Reserve Bank of India. The ABPS is integrated with the Aadhar database to enable secure and efficient payments. Next aspect is that recently what we are seeing is that the system has been expanded to use in various sectors, including agriculture, pension schemes, employment generation programs, reflecting the government's commitment to the digital revolution, digital financial inclusion, right? There is a next term which we are going to discuss. It is the India Stack. Again, as I told, that what we are focusing upon, the integration of these technologies so as to make the governance more smooth, more transparent and more accountable. So therefore, we have this concept of India Stack, which includes the Bharat Quick Response Code, which includes the Aadhar enabled payment system, which includes the Aadhar Pay, which includes Know Your Customer, which includes immediate payment services, and which includes unified payment interface. So do remember, it can be important when you're writing a mains answer. So this is what you need to know with respect to this particular article. So coming to the last article of the day, this is with respect to the Livestock Census. So we have the Union Minister for Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, who has launched the 21st Livestock Census. Now let's talk about what this census is all about. So this census, it's conducted after every 5 years. Census, it carries out the head count of the number of domesticated animals, poultry, stray animals in the country. It gives reliable information with respect to the species, breed, age, sex, and ownership status of these animals. Since 1919, 20 livestock censuses have been carried out, and the last was carried out in 2019. The enumeration process for 21st would be from October 24 till February 2025. Now, in the next few months, we'll have almost 87,000 enumerators which would visit the independent houses, apartments, enterprises, goshalas, poultry farm and different places to gather information about the livestock in India, and this is expected to cover 30 crore households. What animals will be counted in the 21st census? So we have got the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying. This has specified a range of animals, and for example, cattle, buffalo, mutton, yak, sheep, goat, etc. Now this is capture information on 219 indigenous breeds. The ICR, National Bureau for Animal and Genetic Resources, now this is the particular institute which has recognized these breeds, right? And on the basis of that number, on the basis of that list, what you would see is enumeration of different animals, right? The head count of poultry birds such as fowl, chicken, duck and turkey. Now, what is the objective of this livestock census? First is the livestock sector plays an important role in the overall agriculture sector and provides employment to the people in rural areas. In terms of productivity, poultry and animal husbandry contribute to roughly 30% of the gross value added to this particular sector. In the overall economy, the livestock sector's GVA stands at roughly 4.7%. So it's a good amount. It's a huge chunk. For comparison, the whole agriculture sector contributes the GVA to almost 15%, right? GVA refers to the total output of a sector minus the cost of intermediate consumption. Next aspect is the data of the census would be used to estimate the GVA from the livestock sector. and then it would be useful for implementing and formulating different policies. Livestock census shapes policies, ensures sustainable growth of India's livestock sector, and it would be crucial to track progress of achieving the sustainable development goals. For example, we have got the livestock data pertaining to the goal 2, that is zero hunger. Then we have got target 2.5 to maintain genetic diversity in food. Then we have got indicator 2.5.2, the percentage of local livestock breeds that are at risk of extinction. What will remain the same and what will change? See, the census this time will be fully digitized, as was the last case in 2019. This would include online data collection through mobile application, monitoring at various levels through digital dashboard, capturing the latitude and longitude of the data collection. That is the point where the data is being collected, so as to have geo-tagging, right? This is the right word, and generation of livestock census through software. The 21st census will capture several new data points. First is data on pastoral animals and pastoralists, data on the contribution of pastoralists to the livestock sector, more details and having granular information. So it will also focus upon small information, important information. Proportion of households whose major income comes from the livestock sector. It would also contain the data on the gender of stray cattle. Now, this is a good opportunity to have some data points, right? Now, what you need to remember is that India has a vast resource of livestock and poultry, which plays a very important role in the overall socio-economic development of the rural masses. There are about 303.76 million bovines. Then you have got other numbers. In the current scenario, India is the largest producer of milk, second in ag production, and fifth in the overall meat production. Do remember, these points can be important once you're writing mains answer. The livestock sector grew at a compound annual growth rate of 7.38% from 14-15 till 22-23. Export of poultry products in the fiscal year 23-24 touched 1.27 million metric tons. Now, size of Indian poultry industry, it's almost $30.46 billion. 100% FDI is allowed through automatic route. 5.13 is the annual percent growth rate with respect to the meat production. 8.1 is the expected compound annual growth rate of the Indian poultry market. The contribution of the total livestock GVA was 30.23% in the agriculture and allied sectors, right? And 5.5% of the total GVA. India ranks 5th in the world in terms of the meat production. The total meat production in the country is 9.77 million tons. And then we have got the top 5 meat producing states: Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana. Now, this is a credible data, and this has been sourced from IBEF, India Brand Equity Foundation. So you can use this particular data while you're writing your mains answer. So that is it for today. I hope you really enjoyed the session. All the best. Do let us know through your likes and comments. Thank you.